Yo, welcome back. Combat Chat Podcast. As you heard there, it's Shane. Trent.
Yeah, Trent.
My side. And
I'm
you.
Trent. Hi.
Hey, how you fellas doing?
Fine.
Fine?
Yeah, I'm doing very well.
Nice rainy day in Sydney.
Yeah, it's a disgusting day.
It's been a little bit up and down. Like, we had a really hot day before, and then now it's just, it was just fucking raining.
Well, it was really nice during the week when, we were at work and stuff. And then
Yeah. It was. It's actually good to have this kind of weather, like especially yesterday when we did that spar-a-thon for Muay Thai Australia.
Oh, yeah.
What we got? Like 40 rounds?
40 rounds, yeah.
Yeah. I think Phoenix is still going.
Yeah, I think Phoenix should be wrapping up like right now.
How does it work? If you actually do 24 hours, how does that work?
So I think it was start at 9 and basically end at 9, so they might have just finished now.
Do they have a break or?
I think they were doing like shifts, so it's sort of like one of those relay for life type walkathon situations where like just someone's got to be in all the time. It's going for 24 hours, but I think they were like camping at the gym and stuff. They're psychopaths.
They are psychopaths, But other than that, it was a good day, and it was we had a fair few people there, and it was good. I reached my goal to do 20 rounds straight without getting injured, so that's all right. I'm happy with that. Got a few more rounds out. And then, towards the end, we did, mostly shadowboxing because, a few other guys were looking pretty dodgy.
Yeah.
So I don't need that kind of liability.
Yeah.
But, okay, cool. So let's get into it from here because if you're watching the YouTube version, you're probably going, what's that other guy doing in the corner of the screen there? So let's introduce him. So we're bringing him back. It's our correspondent from Mexico, Carlos Thiedeke. How are you today, sir?
Hey, good, lads. Good. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, mate.
Excellent.
Very good. So, we're doing a little bit of a catch up on the situation for you, and it's because you live in Mexico itself. From there, it's there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there during this time, and also for you. But what have you been doing since we last talked, anyway?
Yeah, we surviving. I think the ultimate irony is that I chatted with you guys actually a week and a half before the pandemic kicked off here in the Americas. So I had my parents here, and they ended up going to United States. So we're going to do a bit of a road trip, and then they got a call from the Australian Embassy saying that they needed to get back. They're in Colorado, and they needed to get back to Los Angeles in one day to get the final flight out before they closed down the airports in LAX and stuff. So basically, apart from that, just like what we said, trying to survive, working as much as I can. Obviously, we had a tricky situation for a couple of months in terms of the gym and the training situation because we were in essentially lockdown. So it's a combination of being obviously ethical and being responsible, having the gyms closed, but at the same time, unfortunately, there has been literally no economical support for gym owners here in Mexico from the government. So rent is due at the end of each month, and you have to pay your electricity bills and you have to pay your water bills, but you have nothing coming in. So it's been tricky, mate. We basically have been, this is what I was mentioning to the Ginger Wonder before, the last kind of 2 months, we got permission to loosely open back up again. So basically the last 2 months, we've been able to reactivate classes on a registration and appointment basis. And in addition to that, trying to make agreements with landlords and managing the situation as much as we can financially. So yeah, it's been really tricky, boss. It's been really, really tricky.
I was going to wonder, in terms of from the comparisons between Australia and Mexico, what's the government kind of doing for you, or what restrictions are they putting in place currently?
Yeah, so really good question. Basically, the first month they did put us kind of into a lockdown situation. But what happened is just it wasn't economically viable. So what happened was after that month periods, essentially they said, you know what, we have to reopen the restaurants, we have to reopen the bars. So you can't control a pandemic if people are going to restaurants and bars, and they just obviously don't give a shit. So what had been controlled then exploded again, and they haven't been able to control it since. So for me, it's difficult seeing the situation in Australia, apart from obviously what's been happening with Victoria, from what I understand in Victoria, but being able to see you guys, obviously seeing the MTA videos coming up yesterday, speaking to boss man Andy, all that kind of stuff, kind of everyone getting back into the swing of things. And I'm sitting here being like, I have to manage effectively my cleaning regime in my gym between classes, trying to organize reservations of people coming. And at the same time, because of obviously the economic situation, I can't charge $50 for a private. I can't charge 60 or 70. I'm charging the equivalent of essentially $15 an hour for a private for one person. And that's one person, that's private type thing. So it's kind of hard to break even at the moment.
And once there's a lot of questions to ask, but just to, with this kind of, reservation-based system, like to limit the number of people that are in training, once you've got that number of people in, are they allowed to train as normal, or are there restrictions on amount of contact and stuff like that?
Yeah, so basically the really unfortunate thing is that the national government has said, okay, we can't control this. States, you do your thing.
Okay.
So, for example, here, where like in the state of Guanajuato, El Bajío, the region, basically the government has said gyms can open on a reservation basis. And what happens within that environment is essentially subject to gym owners. So it's kind of us being responsible, having our separated areas, everybody coming in, giving them the opportunity to say, you can train in face mask, you can take your 2x2 square area. If you want to spar, it's your own. This is essentially you taking that decision to do so. For example, in terms of BJJ and grappling, like if you choose to roll, that is your own personal decision. It's not at the liability of the gym. It has to be in your own time, in your own space type thing. So it's a really hard kind of balancing act in terms of ethically meeting our responsibilities as gym operators. And obviously just wanting to get back to train and just kind of having itchy knuckles and itchy geese, essentially.
Are you taking any specific measures for Jiu Jitsu and grappling?
Yes. So firstly, incredibly reduced class numbers, like what we used to be running in terms of 30 plus people and obviously having 15 pairs and just kind of rolling and managing the space. It's about saying, okay, no more than 14, no more than 16 people. In addition to that, obviously having incredibly sanitized areas and spaces. We run mixes of basically what's hospital grade sterilization technology and kind of spraying the mats down, spraying geese. If you come in, the idea is that I was putting the nose test to geese. Basically, if people were coming in, geese were smelling horrible. I was telling them, naff off. Wash yourself, come back tomorrow with a good smelling gi, you prick, because I don't want any of that shit in the gym either. Yeah. So it's been really good. Our head coach, Julio Dominguez, who's been an absolute legend, he's been under huge amounts of stress, obviously financially, but also dealing with economics, has been able to really kind of guide us. The couple of gyms that we still have operating here, some of our affiliates have had to close, unfortunately, within the state. And our head coach, Sergio Palacios, for TPC Anacondas here in Mexico, has also been really helping the coaches by showing good leadership and obviously good direction and setting really clear expectations. So particularly Sergio, via means of Coach Denny Alvarez and obviously Coach Bruno Bastos, gave us very clear instructions of their expectations and obviously following that to a T as well, because as affiliates, we have to make sure we hold the line as well, according to what our head coaches tell us.
And are you finding across the board most gyms are playing the game? Or because what we found here was...
That's a no.
No, what we found here was like most of the gyms were just outright complying with regulations, but then you'd get like... It was one of that situation where, like, you know, a couple of you are going to ruin it for the rest of us. Like, there was examples of some gyms that kind of just decided they wouldn't do the lockdown thing, or they would just, you know, try to find pretty stupid loopholes, like, and kind of just run the risk of it. Is it kind of the same situation there?
Yeah, for sure, mate. We had massive outrage. Like, I'm talking, like, we literally got to the point of essentially protests and violence at one point because we had a massive clandestine gym situation, not just across the country, but particularly here in the state where I'm in. And I wish I was joking. But it got to the point where they brought the army and the National Guard in to be patrolling for gyms that were operating illegally. So instead of dealing with drug traffic and narco crime and narco activity, they had to bring in military resources because there were so many people, so many gym owners, obviously because of desperation. We're talking about this is month 3 or month 4, and they're saying, guys, like, you're giving me no economic support. The fucking restaurant in France and old mate with his taco stand, his taqueria in France, basically are operating normal. And you're saying, like, I have all of these steps in place to control my gym going population. You're saying I still can't open. I'm X amount of thousands of dollars in the hole. So what do I do? And then they turn up with a military, close you down, and then take your resources.
It's crazy.
And did a lot of gyms kind of get stuck with that? Well, like, was there a lot of examples of guys getting... Because I'd imagine, like, if you're already struggling financially from a couple of months of lockdown, and then, you know, the military come through and you get whatever punishments come with that, that's going to be hard to come back from. So was there a lot of gyms kind of getting, you know, purged for breaking the rules?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like, from what I was reading the other day, it's something like, of the gyms that were open here in this, at least just in the city, like in Leon, Guanajuato, where I live. So of all the gyms, 1 out of 3 are closed.
Wow.
From the beginning of pandemic to now. So basically 2 out of 3 survived, and fortunately 1 out of 3. And I'm not talking like old mates kind of garage gym. I'm talking like some of the kind of like the F45 style, those kinds of bigger places, because a lot of people had invested a lot of capital late last year when there was a big June boom and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously COVID comes around the corner and these guys already have loans up to their eyes. They're only just breaking even. So lots of those guys have had to shut down as well. And
from where you're sitting now, kind of like from a like a competitive standpoint, where do you think that puts the sport? Like, are you seeing... Do you think that's going to be a lot? Because we were talking the last time we spoke about how kind of like just getting kind of more so on the jiu-jitsu side, like getting a reasonable number of competitive experience for guys was kind of just starting to get the ball rolling. Like, it was something that was... So where do you think that puts, you know, the competitive side of things? Because obviously, like, a lot of people now will be out of a place to train, and maybe gyms won't be thinking about competing first and foremost. So and that... that has an impact on how the sport's able to grow. So how do you think it holds the sports back for the next few years even?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like 8 ways of fucked, realistically. Yeah. It's really tough because, again, going into the beginning of this year, like what you were mentioning, mate, like we had massive plans, particularly for us as an affiliate for Jiu Jitsu, in terms of going to Mexico Open, going to Mexico National and all this kind of stuff. And that's massive. And you're seeing as well that all of these guys, like competitors, like some of the guys that I was doing camps with and stuff like that, basically saying like, look, I've had to evaluate my life as it is, and probably a few of these guys who winning nationals last year and Mexican Opens are saying, maybe I don't go back to the sport because at the end of the day, I'm concerned about the COVID situation. I don't want to get sick. I need to focus on my studies, or I need to focus on my career because I'm financially in the hole. So you're actually going to see some of the top competitors dropping out. So it's really, really unfortunate, mate, because like what you said, we're not talking about 6 months or 12 months recovery time. We're talking about years. We're talking about the next generation almost having to come through, whether it be jiu-jitsu, grappling, Muay Thai, MMA. I'm doing some pro bono work with a couple of young kids, 15, 16-year-olds from from a really poor neighborhoods here. I'm just doing privates for free for them to try to keep them engaged, because these are kids that are coming from, again, rough neighborhoods, drug-based neighborhoods, all this kind of stuff. And I'm telling them, like, you know what, fuck it. Like, you don't have cash, that's fine. Just come train with me, come in the afternoons when you finish your classes, come on Sundays, whatever. So for me, I guess that's how I'm trying to help out. But like what you said, the impact is going to take a while to recover. Speaking about a competitive level.
You mentioned also that there's a lot of clandestine gym activity going on. What about closed door activity for things like jiu-jitsu? But it's a lot harder to implement any kind of training without contact. Are you hearing rumours, because I certainly have, of people training in groups behind closed doors?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I use that word very strongly. Very fortunate is that from the beginning, I basically had a very small community in the kind of my trainers and the 2 or 3 people that said, okay, cool, we understand the situation, so we're going to train in the best way that we can. And so we did that according to health measures, health standards, safety standards, all that kind of stuff. But like what you're saying, the unfortunate thing is that so many people were doing closed door activities without putting those things into play by saying, like, you know what, we're just going to keep going normal. And if something happens, well, we'll deal with it at that time. And the unfortunate thing is that we've had 2 gym owners pass away the last 2 months here in Leon. Because of the fact that they kept running their gyms, not looking after themselves, and ended up with COVID. And unfortunately, because the health system here is not great, obviously, from the perspective of resources, passed away. So yes, we are seeing the negative results of that kind of closed door activity for sure.
Well, it's like going into that a little bit, into the COVID things. You were just telling us beforehand, before recording that yourself, that you actually got COVID. And like deal with like, so like, a lot of people like, there's a lot of conspiracy theories going on. Is COVID a real thing? Like how it affects people and like that. But like, it's good to like, like someone for yourself that's actually experienced it. And like, and you're a young, healthy fella as well. Like, how was your experience?
Rough. I'm not sure how else I put it. I was really observant because what happened was I hadn't been training because I felt kind of low on energy. So I basically said, like, you know what, I'm just going to clear myself out. I'm just going to go for a couple of runs. I'll just keep my space just in case. This was kind of leading up to a Sunday. On a Sunday, I broke out with a fever and I thought, oh, this is a bit rough. Hopefully it's just a bit of the old flu and cough and sniff and fart and all that kind of stuff. And progressively over a week, I got sicker and the fever didn't go away and body aches and all the other kind of symptoms came on. Again, very fortunate in that my partner here, her father is connected in the health sector. He was working in the public health sector for essentially 32 years, just recently retired. So he basically put me in his truck on a Friday and said, I don't care what you want, I'm taking you to get the test done. So there was me and my blanket and my onesie and all this kind of stuff, just sweat dripping off me. And threw me in the truck and got the test and came back 2 days later positive. Obviously, that entire week leading up to that, just in my house, this was 2.5, 3 months ago. So I was really transparent. The couple of people that I had seen, just socially type thing, I had made them aware of kind of what had happened. Fortunately enough, no one I had contact with ended up getting sick or anything like that. And I proceeded to finish up my quarantine period basically in isolation, just to make sure that didn't happen. And slowly but surely, once I got cleared from my doctor, my medical team and all that kind of stuff that I'm associated with here, started getting back into physical activity.
And what's the availability of testing like there? So you would have gone into a doctor and got tested at a practice?
No. So basically how it works is that the international companies here, like, because there's lots of business parks, there's a lot of manufacturing here. So if you're fortunate enough to be in those kinds of companies, they have on-site testing for obvious reasons because they have massive workforces. For me, because I'm obviously a teacher as well, I am subject just to normal kind of the equivalent of public health. When I went on to inquire about testing, there was a 3-week wait for testing. So basically, as I said, through my girlfriend's father, he was able to organize through a private testing clinic. Obviously ended up being a little bit more expensive. I think it was about equivalent of $300 Australian type thing. I ended up getting taken to this private clinic to get the testing done because otherwise I'd just been sitting there. And if I wanted to go into public health, I would have had to turn up. Basically, they open the doors at 6 a.m. If you're really lucky, obviously you get there kind of 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to kind of start waiting in line. And if you're, again, even luckier, you'll get tested on the day. If not, they just tell you to come back the next day.
Wow.
So basically you get tested, have to wait weeks for a result, by which time your symptoms are probably gone anyway, to be told you have it.
Exactly. Or the other thing is that there is unfortunately a very large percentage of people that maybe don't have it or have flu-like symptoms or have to get treated for other reasons, going into the public healthcare system, getting sick, getting COVID or becoming asymptomatic, returning to their house, ending up getting obviously full-blown COVID and then getting other people sick as well. So unfortunately, it's kind of like this perpetuating circle of negativity in COVID. So I was very fortunate to be sorted out and hooked up to go through this private clinic to get tested. And as I said, incredibly fortunate, incredibly grateful to the people that did look after me in that circumstance.
And are you finding in general, are people kind of, are they wanting to get tested or are they kind of sort of preferring not to bother? Like if someone, like, you know, in general, if someone looks like they've got flu-like symptoms, are they, you know, are they forward about wanting to get tested, like as, you know, in general?
Not really, mate. There's a really unfortunate relationship here just because, this is what I was mentioning to boss man Andy Parnham the other day. He and I FaceTimed and had a bit of a chat. I was mentioning to him, unfortunately, there's a lot of negativity and a lot of superstition around COVID here, coming a little bit from just being a superstitious culture, but also a little bit of religion as well. So I was mentioning to him, unfortunately, even, for example, here in Leon or different parts of the country, you have had nurses, doctors physically assaulted. There was several doctors murdered because of having relationship with COVID. So people are very hesitant to admit having COVID and obviously as a result, there's a high resistance about getting tested as well because of those kind of the stigma.
What about the general public at the moment? They're like, you know, well, the government itself, are they telling people to wear masks over there, or is like, you know, are they giving fines out to people or whatnot?
Oh, for sure, mate. I mean, there's no fining. There's no kind of financial implication if you're caught. Basically, at the end of the day, the police force here, as fantastic as they are incredibly understaffed and under-resourced. So it's not that they can be dealing with people walking around without masks, unfortunately. It's obviously not it's not very high on their priorities in compared to dealing with the crime that goes on day to day. What happened is that basically the government came out at the beginning of the pandemic saying that, very similar to the rhetoric from the United States, that it wasn't a big deal, that everything was going to pass in a month or two. There was no need for kind of face masks and all that kind of stuff. And the last couple of months, obviously, they've gone 180 and said that, yes, we need face masks, we need hand sanitizer, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, it's a little bit too little too late.
Yeah. And like, is Mexico as a whole as well, like, I guess a lot of it would be like, well, in terms of economy and that, like tourism, it's a big part of like, you know, that where they get a lot of people get their income from. Is there any like people coming from the States coming over, or they have to get permits, or they're totally shutting it down, like, you know, crossing the borders as such?
Coming into Mexico, basically it's remained open the entire time. They've tried to encourage people to continuously come in. Obviously, there has been travel warnings from basically every government in the world saying don't travel United States, don't travel to Mexico, don't travel to Brazil. For example, I was looking at the economic stats the other day. Obviously, I think it was coming out in Australia that June had a 4 or 5% economic shrinkage. And then obviously everyone blew up over that. Here in Mexico, basically they had a 24% economic shrinkage. So if you kind of compare Australian economy having a 4% shrinkage to Mexican economy having a 24% shrinkage, it's a big difference. And that, like what you said, that's off the back of particularly tourist numbers being heavily declined.
It might be even like the reverse, like instead of like, you know, a lot of Mexican people going to America to find opportunities for work, like probably there's maybe a lot of US people just go, you know what, I need to get the fuck off this dumpster fire.
Hey, yeah, no, 100%, particularly the last, like even before COVID, boss, like particularly last year, the year before, were record numbers of Latinos in general, not just Mexicans, but Latinos returning from United States to Mexico, to Guatemala, to Honduras and stuff like that, because obviously just the current political and social climate in the United States hasn't been kind or isn't beneficial to Latinos at the moment. So yeah, for sure. In addition to that, like what you said, you have lots of small American expat communities that are getting bigger here in Mexico for the same reason. They can basically bring their dollars and live very comfortably for extended periods of time without the need to work.
So what policies are Mexico implementing to keep out illegal American immigrants?
You're going to build a really big wall. They're going to build a really big wall.
I think that's a good idea.
Exactly. And the Americans are going to pay.
The US
I think
should
that's
pay for
basically
it. Yeah.
No, there's the current president here and the current political climate in Mexico is kind of very apathetic towards the situation. They know that kind of like on their list of problems, this is kind of lower. There's obviously still a very heavily influenced climate of drug-based politics, of this conversation coming up now about legalization of marijuana and what that means and all that kind of stuff. So this is very low on the list in all respect to the Mexican government, and particularly sports. Unfortunately, sports is even lower, is what we've seen, because we've received no economic assistance whatsoever. The only assistance that came out was basically a temporary grant from state governments of up to $2,000, but it was up to a 42% interest rate.
Wow. Unbelievable.
So that's what they consider economic support. $2,000 at 42%.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So why giving anything out, eh?
No.
Take half that back. So, for you, how do you feel over there? Have you ever thought about, it's like, is it like, do I stay here? Is it time to come? Is like, do I come back to Australia if I'm able to as well? Like, where's your mind at amongst it all?
Yeah. I mean, it's a conversation that I've been having, I guess, reoccurringly. One of the biggest things is that we have my girlfriend's residency still going through processing right now. Obviously, those timeframes have been extended because of the current situation. So I pay merits. I hope and pray, obviously, that we get a yes from that very soon, so we can obviously start planning. Realistically speaking, I feel that I still have some responsibilities here. I guess it is kind of like a way of saying it. I have found an incredible community that I can kind of share and coach in, and I'm learning a lot, particularly from the perspective of jiu-jitsu from my coach Julio Dominguez, and directly obviously from my head coaches of Sergio Palacios, and some of the opportunities to work with Denny Alvarez and Bruno Bastos over I've only got 18 months in the sport right now, and the growth that I've experienced and the feedback particularly I've got from my coaches is something that I want to continue to invest in, because it's an opportunity I want to take advantage of. So as I can kind of balance that out, as I can continue to invest and maximize obviously the returns and the work I'm doing with my teams here, that once I kind of find that that's balancing out, and I feel that I have paid them back for everything that they have given me, is then I feel morally we'll be able to move on. In addition, obviously having my partner, my girlfriend's visa as well, to be able to move together, because there's no way she's my rock, and there's no way I'm going anywhere without her.
And it kind of like shows how much your heart, you've put into what you're doing in Mexico, but I guess how much Mexico's become home. That, I think, and you couldn't really blame a lot of people in your position, probably back maybe March, April would have been like, oh, maybe because you've got family here and stuff like that. Maybe would have just been like, might just jump on a plane and ride this out back home. But you opted to stay. I think that's pretty courageous, really. Thank
you, mate. Thank you. I honestly feel, this is what I say, is that I'm not sure how long it will take me to pay them back. I guess for everything they have done. The sporting community here has been so welcoming and so incredible to help me grow, not just a coach for Muay Thai and striking, but what they've given me in terms of bringing me another sport. That for me, it's not too much of a hassle to think about, I could be in Australia. Obviously, more than anything, I miss my family. I miss PTJ. I miss you guys. I miss the sport as a whole. Obviously, the Muay Thai culture there, like what we were mentioning back in March, is a lot more authentic, but I still feel that I can make a little bit more of a difference here.
And I was interested to hear this as well. Obviously, yeah, like we said about sort of March, April, and it really, once it really started to become that point where, yeah, this isn't just going to blow over in a couple of weeks. And the correspondence started to come out, if you're an Australian overseas, now is the time to start coming home. I heard a lot of stories of friends in various countries where it kind of like, it fostered a bit of an us versus them mentality for, people native to a country and people who are foreign, to the point where it kind of like, that they became all of a sudden quite unwell, and it was kind of, it was almost like hammered in by a little bit of propaganda almost, like because countries just wanted to kind of say like, oh, we're doing fine with this virus, it's all these damn foreigners bringing it in. And now it's an interesting situation because obviously you weren't in Mexico on holiday, you've been there for ages. Did you kind of start to find that, as someone who doesn't look Mexican at all, did you start to find, like, did you get the side eye a little bit? Did you find people were a little bit less welcoming of someone who sort of looked like they were from elsewhere, or did you think things kind of just stayed business as usual?
Pretty much business as usual, to be transparent with you. One of the biggest things is that there is a very large and a growing community here in this part of the country of Japanese and Chinese businesses. They were the ones that were quite heavily targeted, because obviously in the news was coming out saying, bloody China started this, China. So obviously as a result, there was a lot of negativity towards those communities. Obviously unjustly, these people living here were not responsible for what happened in China. So they were the ones that definitely copped it. But fortunately enough, the way they have their living residencies set up here, they live in gated communities. So there wasn't really kind of a safety concern for them. It was just more of like a social discord, I guess, towards that part, that demographic of the community.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just hard for everyone, isn't it? But I think it's good, like, especially like for our listeners, like talking to someone like you, like putting stuff in perspective, like in terms of, like, obviously Melbourne, we'll forget Melbourne for a little bit from there, their little thing, but like Australia's got out pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, mate.
Yeah. With Mexico at the moment, from there, do you think they're getting a handle of it, or is it still just very up and down? Like, are you afraid, like, is there enough, you think at any moment another lockdown could happen?
Oh, for sure, mate. So obviously, apart from the gyms, like we mentioned, I've basically been teaching kind of ESL, or English as a second language, and also doing kind of translation work and all that kind of stuff in companies. So to give you some context, so we basically got told by education department that all of our work had to be online. So this started obviously April. We're officially online. And we have been given a tentative date of return to physical classes of March next year.
Okay, March. Yeah, that's the usual time frame for like a lot of places, isn't it?
And when you get,
so I mean, it's battle. It's a battle.
When you get tentative dates for things like that, I'm not sure, how much of the way out of a roadmap, out of a lockdown's been roadmap thus far. But do you find it's like, when they set a date for something, if they have been like an ease of restrictions, it generally works that way, or does it kind of just become a matter of like they roadmap it out and then it just gets pushed back further and further as time goes on?
Correct.
Yeah.
The idea particularly is what we saw in the gyms, mate, is like for 3 months, we kept getting told next week.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like next week, no problems. The next week, oh no, next week. Week after that, next week, and this went on for 3 months type thing. So part of it is obviously population and damage control, I guess, so to speak. And unfortunately, it's just a lack of knowledge. Like, they didn't plan it from the beginning. They said they had it all under control, but realistically, there was a lot of winging it. It was very transparent, like what we kind of identified before, that the national government said, you know what? We can't handle this as states. Do your thing. And then the states were like, what? So it's kind of a bit of a reflection about that. The states, everybody has their own plan. For example, again, this is one of the the things that, again, super massive respect to our head coaches that work out of the north in Monterrey in the state of Nuevo Leon, which is just kind of south of Texas, up that area. It's about 2 hours south of Texas driving. Those guys are still shut. So, for example, they've been seeing their affiliates, us, the different parts of the different other states opening up again. And without having their own gyms open, have been giving us the leadership and direction. And like what you said, the unfortunate thing is having these dates, so to speak, but not being able to have any confidence because they come around the corner and then you just get told another 2 weeks or another month or whatever it is.
Yeah, because I think what we found, and it's so, I think getting to where we're at this stage, it's kind of just fascinating to speak to someone like yourself and get that perspective of because this has been felt everywhere. But now that like we can look back on the earlier parts of the year and really get a feel for not just what other parts of the world experience, but what I still experience. You realize we got off, especially in Sydney, we got off pretty easy. For sure. Really.
Yeah, for sure.
We could have easily been Melbourne.
Yeah.
We could have been them.
It was just luck. It wasn't because people in New South Wales were better planned or more considerate. It was just luck.
Yeah, and really when we look back on look, hopefully the worst is over, right? There's no U-turn. But when I look back on the worst of the lockdown here in New South Wales, and obviously it was, some people really struggled through it, of course. People did lose their jobs and stuff like that. Yeah. But from a general just societal place, it's you felt it at its worst, but it was kind of just spend most of your time at home. People were working from it. The gyms were shut. The activities that you like to do weren't happening. But really, you stay home. If you wanted to go and pick up some takeaway food or something, you could go do that. You could go do your groceries. You could get outside, and sort of just, work out as you want.
I was going surfing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
When we compare, and bloody, we whinged. We whinged about it.
We all whinged.
God, we whinged.
Yeah, we whinged a lot, but really,
that's what it means to be Australian, is to have a whinge.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, so now to really sit here, and really, like we were speaking before, at the moment, we are still without our, the real kind of the luxuries, right? You can't go to a big event, you can't go, it's kind of just but it's the same thing. It's just things we do for fun that aren't happening. You can go sit in a restaurant, you can go to the pub with your mates. The gym is absolutely pumping, so it is kind of just crazy to get that perspective of now we're at a point where you go, oh, that was weird.
It happened.
Yeah, that was a little annoying, but yeah, it's crazy to hear someone like yourself sticking it out there in Mexico and still just the level of uncertainty of it must just still be is it just taxing to kind of to feel you not really know what's going on?
Oh, for sure. One of the biggest things is what I was saying to boss man Andy the other day is I have absolute respect for guys like him, for guys like yourselves who did the right thing in order to control it and now are recovering and doing the right thing still, right? About this consecutive sequence of being responsible and obviously ethically responsible for your gym and for the people wanting to train. For me here, it was already a stressful situation living in Mexico in terms of the level of uncertainty. And now, in addition to that, when I got sick, there is no amount of merits that I can pay in Temple for the amount of stress that I put my parents through. 100%. I will be in my 80s and still praying in Temple to pay my parents back for the amount of stress I put them through day to day. Because when I got sick, again, unfortunately, because my work situation, I don't have medical insurance anymore. So it was kind of if I don't go to the hospital, firstly, will they take me in? Or secondly, how much will I end up paying? So obviously my parents and my mum having a medical background as well, kind of catching up with me every day. Fortunately enough, because again, incredible partner and her family having taken care of me, I didn't have to go to the hospital. And obviously being in really good shape as well beforehand, was managed to go through it. But yeah, the uncertainty, mate, is just... I wake up some mornings and I kind of roll out of bed and I think, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Oh, what is this type thing? There goes my headphones. But then I take my butt to the gym. I fucking train the lads. I have some of these kids come in, and dead set, it sounds like the absolute blowing smoke up your butt. But to be able to work with some of these kids, so I have this one kid now who's 15. His name's Lionel Conde, and 100% in 5 years' time, if he keeps his head on his shoulders, he is UFC champion. Like, the kid is currently, as a stick, he weighs like 47, 48 kilos. He's basically had about 5 or 6 fights. Of all of them, between MMA and kickboxing and Muay Thai, he's all stopped the other kid in the first rounds, either submission or knockout, and is just a sponge. Like, for me to be able to work with kids like that, again, I just tell them, you know what? I'd rather you come and train with me here on Sunday than you fucking around with your mates or getting up to mischief and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that, again, I don't want to blow smoke up my butt, but for me, that is how I get through that level of uncertainty, being able to have that focus and to be able to work with some absolute bloody BJJ ninjas. Like, the quality of the black belts right now, particularly here in Leon, that I get to work with, and having gone to the seminars at the end of last year, beginning of this year, being able to learn as much as I can, that's priceless. Like, it's the equivalent of you going to Thailand for 6 months and being able to do a full camp there. And you say, oh, you know what, it's really hard and there's a lot of other shit going on and all this kind of stuff. But you know what I get from it is worth so much more than the uncertainty and the stress, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's yeah. That was I was going to ask you as well. Like, you know, how do you keep a positive mindset outside of this? And like, it comes back to the gym again, yeah, all the time. For sure,
no, 100%, mate. It comes from my students. Unfortunately, I'm only working 10% of my hours in terms of teaching for English, as I was before the pandemic. So I don't get a lot of FaceTime with them. Yeah, mate, 10%. Wow. So that's 10% of my wage, essentially, 10% of what I was earning and I'm earning now. So this is why I've really had to focus on the gym. But 100%, mate, my girlfriend's an incredible support because she's so tolerant. She trains herself, she trains weights, and she goes for a run and stuff when she can. But I go to gym kind of mornings. I train myself. I train with the black belt, Julio Dominguez, the brown belts, the purple belts in the morning. Come home, have a shower. Then in the afternoons, I've got my privates. I teach class. I do another technique class, maybe roll in the evening, depending on what the situation is and obviously what our allowances are. Because sometimes the government does change it day by day in terms of, are you allowed to train in groups? Are you not allowed to train in groups? So we always check the kind of day before. So for sure, mate, if I've testified numerous times, if I didn't have the gym right now in my life, between my girlfriend and my gym, that's what's keeping me focused and that's what's keeping my head on the shoulders right now.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. It's like, I guess at the moment, like, you know, Melbourne people are going through a similar situation because they just get, you know, shut down, not allowed to do anything like that. Do you have any advice for those kind of guys that are kind of like, you know, struggling a little bit there, like, you know, mentally and whatnot, and like, you know, because you've been in the situation a bit, even probably worse as well. But like, you know, everyone has their own struggles in that one. But do you have any advice for those guys down there that are Australia's own Mexicans?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Mexico of Australia, the sub-Mexico. The biggest thing is just really focusing on why the restrictions are in place, because currently living in a country that didn't give a shit to the restrictions and are now paying the consequences, you are so much better off giving up rolling or giving up contact, for example, for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and getting on, like what Hugh was saying before, being like, oh, fuck, that was a strange couple of months, then we move on with life, than being in this constant state of stress and turmoil. So the biggest way is, I guess, just rephrase the thinking. Obviously trying to remain as active as you can. Even when I was sick, I have dumbbells in the house. So just trying to remain active, do all that kind of the usual stuff, but just really focus on reframing what it means to be in restrictions and why that is. Obviously, there's a certain element of mismanagement that we've seen in Victoria and stuff like that. And obviously, I can't begrudge people being frustrated, but the biggest thing is just kind of really focusing on why it's happening, because the alternative is not great. Trust me, I'm living in the alternative right now, and it's not great.
Yeah, I saw a headline yesterday that several European countries are going back into lockdown now. So they're getting hit with a second wave.
Yep.
Second wave. And one of the biggest things that we've seen here too, boss, is the variation in symptoms in C19 as well is incredibly drastic. And so that's in addition to Mexico is behind the United States, but has an incredibly high rate of obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. So obviously that's in a combination with C19 doesn't mix. So it's a whole bunch of different socioeconomic and obviously health factors, pandemic factors right now as well.
Yeah, you make a good point about kind of just understanding why we were going into lockdown and stuff like that, and understanding like the potential ramifications of like just not playing along. Because like when this lockdown thing first happened, man, I could have made some money. Like I had so many people hitting me up like, man, can we do a private? Like, will you? And I go, man, the gyms are shut. Like, what do you mean, can we do a private? You'll let me in though, right? Like, we don't have to tell anyone. And like, I had people like, I'll pay you really well for it. And things like, oh, but you could just, I've got a little home gym. You could come. Like, I got a good number of those messages. Like, oh, while the gym's shut, like, how about you do? And it's like, hey, how about you just kind of do a private with me? And then I was like, but that really just like defeats the purpose, right? Like
I made a fortune out of private. I tell you, man, I made so much. No, I'm just kidding.
He's rolling in it right now. Like,
Private's a prostitution.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, black belt prostitution. Yeah. Because I mean, one of the biggest things, mate, you're spot on. Like, and what it comes down to is leadership within, for example, in this case, being the gym environment. So this is what I keep rattling on about. For example, Sergio Palacios told us from the beginning, as a team, this is how we're going to be working in the next 3 months. Okay, cool. No rolling, no training, etc. Gym shut. And it's the same thing with you guys. Obviously, you guys in Double Dre and Andy the same. No matter who you speak to, which gym, urban in Queensland, etc. Each gym had a very strong leadership structure that said, you know what? No sacrifices, no messing around, no shitting around. This is what we're going to do. And like what you said, mate, to understanding the reasons why you're doing it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and like this is what I just think people like the whole kind of lockdown and stuff like that. It does just give like a bit of like a pause for reflection of just how like selfish we can become, like when we're just living like normal. Because people would say like, oh, what about you can just let me in and we'll do a private, and then that's that. And I go, yeah, and then we get a knock on the door from the cops who were kind of rolling around making sure everything was like normal. And they say, this isn't allowed. We're going to fine. Because I would get a fine, right? And the person who's doing the private would get a fine, but the gym would get a fine. And that's away from me. And then the gym would get maybe banned for, would have to deal with that fine when they have no income coming in while the gym's shut. But then also possibly, gyms who didn't play by the rules would get banned from operating when things reopened. That would have been a problem I had created, where the ramifications of the problem fall most seriously with not me. Like I'm not, I'd probably get a fine, but it's not, I'd have to pay that fine, and then I'm good, right? It's then the gym as a whole that maybe never comes back from that. And there's just like, if I explain that to someone, they'd go, oh yeah, that would kind of suck. But it wasn't a thought that occurred to them. Like they just thought, and like, what, they just want a private. And when you think about like the ripple effect potentially off of that private, they never think beyond like, I fancy hitting some pads. And so I just want to go and do that. But like, when you think about like, that is a lot of like a pretty grave consequence just so you can have your session.
It's a huge sense of entitlement, mate.
Yeah.
Like you just have to look on bloody social media. And this is one of the things that frustrates me a lot about my race, about the Aussies sometimes, is it's like what you were saying. It's a fucking fantastic situation. Stop fucking complaining.
100%.
Just suck it up for a little bit. And okay, I understand like what you're saying. Like, you know what? It's shit. Like all of us get super frustrated when we can't have a hit out, when we can't have a roll. But you know what? Just deal with it just for a little bit. Just understand the consequences, because as we said, the alternative is not great. And like what you're saying, mate, it's this kind of sense of like, you're my mate, I deserve it. Or I think I deserve it. So you should help a brother out, or Yeah, so I definitely understand 100%. You're spot on.
Yeah, and it always comes back to the same thing. Like, no, I'll pay you this much, and I go, I don't care how much money you have. Like, that's not going to change the situation. Like, it's just that default setting becomes, oh no, it's not a problem. I have money.
Yes.
But you know what you say? You know what to say to that guy? You no, it's like, damn it.
You motherfucker, you.
I just wanted to use the soundboard. Yeah, there's our system
This
now.
is the soundboard. But yeah, no, for sure, mate. And like what you're saying, Hugh, when you think about it, you can say, okay, cool, you'll give me $70 for a private or whatever. But you know what? Financially, I'm secure enough to say, no, I'm good. Unfortunately, here in Mexico, there's a shit ton of people that don't have that luxury.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you call it luxury or in like financial infrastructure, however you want to word it. So that's why we're seeing so many gyms opening against health restrictions in the first months, explosion of cases, because people are saying, like, if I don't open, I don't eat.
Yeah, for real. And that it comes back to that same kind of just gratitude thing. Like that's a really good point, because when someone says, like, you know, I can pay if this private, it's like, I am in a position, like you said, where I can, you know, I'm good. You know, I don't need that'd be nice to make, you know, we all want more money.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I'm not getting this message and going like, okay, yeah, this is going to be my chance to eat. And then like, and if that's the case, yes, you're not going to think about the ramifications. And, you know, I won't, and fair enough, right? Like, it's, as human beings, it's quite difficult to think beyond your ability to get your next meal. But it's the same thing. It just shows how lucky we are in Australia.
Oh, so lucky.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like as you said over there, like 1 in 3 gyms or something that closed down. I don't know any gyms that in our circle that closed down. Like, we got pretty good. Like, you know, the government's looked after us a fair bit. That much, like, you know, still, like, there's still complaints about shit like that, and that's fine. I get that. But, like, you know, really, all the grants, JobKeeper and that, like, man, it's like, you know, we're actually getting stuff. Like, you guys are just absolutely struggling, or, you know, you're getting something, but it's going to get taken away from you again.
Correct,
soon.
exactly. It's the equivalent. You literally said it spot on, boss. Like, it's the equivalent of saying, like, okay, PTJ, Double Dragon, Muay U, one of those 3 close, for example. We all know it'd be Kieran, but like, out of the 3, like, in all fairness, you're saying one of those 3 are going to shut. But that's the situation. That's literally what we've been seeing so far. Sorry, Kieran, I love you, buddy. Don't beat me up if you come to Mexico next time for WBC conference. But, it's basically that's it. That's what's happening.
Yeah, and like, just to give you a picture of where it's at, like, especially here in Sydney, like, since, you know, like we were saying before, it really does feel like we're kind of like out the other end of this right now. Like businesses are kind of really going again. Like, gyms are opening, you know, like just down the road from us, like a gym just opened the other weekend, and like, that's kind of how we've been, like shows you kind of, you know, how fortunate a lot of these gyms were able to get through this, because like we're in a position now where it's not just like things are going, like things are back to a point of being able to grow again. Like, people are being able to open gyms.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I mean, like what you said, in terms of just economic recovery, you're seeing that in Australia. And whether it be in gyms or whether it be in the global economic structure, it's getting there. The unfortunate thing is from United States all the way down to Brazil, this part of the world in general will be in recovery realistically for many years. Yeah. Not just in terms of getting through the pandemic, but the economic implications of having so many either third world or only emerging economies that have suffered so much economically speaking. It's the ramifications, speaking in terms of financial system, is going to take years to recover.
I've noticed a disturbing trend. There's a rise in the use of grappling dummies, the sex dolls of Jiu Jitsu.
The sex dolls of Jiu Jitsu, yeah, for sure.
But I guess it's better than nothing, though. You can drill those arm bars without smashing your partner. Honey, come in here.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that it's something that we were seeing a lot in like the affiliate gyms through United States and stuff like that, particularly when they were allowed to reopen in, I think it was back in even April, May when those gyms started to reopen. The first month, like what you were saying, they were using the old grappling dummies, and I was kind of looking at being like, it doesn't have the same feel. But I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you're in there, you doing your drills, it's something at least.
Yeah.
Exactly. So any other stuff?
Yeah, interested to hear as well. Just like I guess with all this time kind of lockdown and stuff like that, have you made, be it about combat sports, because I know that's a lot of your focus, or in general, interested to hear, like, has it kind of shifted your plans? Like, have you got, you know, different ideas in the pipeline, like new things coming up, just kind of come up with some schemes in the lockdown time, or sort of what's going to be, once things start to kind of get moving like normal again, sort of what's on the cards? What are you really looking forward to doing?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got, I love that. Working with this young kid, Leonel, definitely trying to sort out some matches for him when promotions start opening up. We obviously have one of the biggest promotions starting back up will be WBC in November. And I think they're going to really lead the charge in terms of being responsible in terms of putting on some shows. So for me, it's been about kind of building my relationship network a little bit to start working out some matches, because besides finding another kid at between 47 to 50 kilos is a monumental effort. So that in itself is difficult to match, let alone a kid that's just been demolishing everyone else that he's fought up till now.
But has he put on some weight over COVID?
No, he's a bloody twig, this kid. It's ridiculous. Like, you can pump food into him and he doesn't grow. He just basically, because he puts out so much. His dad is one of our brown belts, Chewy Conde, who I just have absolute respect for. Again, kind of rough upbringing, all that kind of stuff, but has been the best role model for this kid. And this kid's just been putting down kilometers in the morning when he's not doing classes, eating, coming and training. So he's just a calorie burning machine, this kid. So it's about kind of focusing on him. For myself as well, it's focusing a lot on jiu-jitsu, focusing a lot of jiu-jitsu to bring relationships together, and how those relationships, I guess, will expand to Australia when I move, type thing, because it's just a huge passion being able to learn so much in a short period of time and to have such fantastic feedback. So looking at, I guess, learning as well from our head coach, who puts on King of the Mat, which is essentially the biggest private or non-IBJJF or group affiliated tournament here in Mexico, learning about how he puts on a tournament, the structure, because we'd love to do we don't have any kind of submission only events down here in Mexico. It's a lot of kind of always the IBJJF structured events. Nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we know it's just a different way of doing it, but we'd love to kind of put together a business plan and get some sub-only tournaments happening, particularly gi-based tournaments in the early next year. We'd love to get some of that stuff happening, because there's a lot of talent. There's so much. It's ridiculous the amount of talent coming out of Mexico, but because of lack of resources, obviously they can't get to the States, they can't get to Brazil and stuff like that to train. So if we can start putting on some events, trying to get their names a little bit more on social media, get them marketed a bit better, then hopefully we can get some really awesome Mexican talent international as well, whether it be for striking, Muay Thai, MMA, or particularly for my passion in BJJ and grappling.
And I mean, because you don't really have an affiliation with BJJ here in Australia, right? Like you just... No. So it must be an interesting thought that, like, you know, you kind of, when you moved from Australia, like, you really had your feet in our Muay Thai scene, but not so much the BJJ. And, you know, now you've gone over there and really sort of found a passion in that. So it must be an interesting thought for you when you come back to Australia, that you'll then get to kind of, like, you know, reintegrate to Australia and kind of, like, find your Australian BJJ home a bit.
Yeah, no, for me, that's really, really cool. And even just the irony of being able to chat to guys like yourselves about this and to be like, oh, cool. Like, what does the scene look like? Because obviously kind of the biggest names, at least coming out of Australia internationally, are the absolute boys. Yeah. But obviously in terms of Sydney and stuff, I know we got super amount of talent apart from the bearded wonder down the end there. Your bearded wonder black belt sitting there. So, I mean, no, the potential is huge. And again, like what I was saying, for me, that brings a lot of excitement in terms of having potential conversations about what that looks like. Coach Bruno, I love spending time with him because he's been to Australia about 5 or 6 times, if I remember correctly, from what he said. He's done a lot of seminars since 2002. So he loves Australia and all that kind of stuff. And he said, basically, our conversation was, give me an excuse to come out there, Carl, and I'll see you out there. I'm like, all right, boss, we'll make it happen type thing. So, it's hugely exciting just in terms of, well, this is what we're saying before. If I sit here being in a negative space, then fuck it, I'm just going to get negativity back. If 100%. I'm focusing on all the positive things or all the good things I can bring out of this, then fuck it, that's going to give me energy until whenever, when I'm in the grave type thing.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Cool. I think I'll call it stumps there, Carlos. That
For
one.
sure, mate.
It's like, it was awesome talking to you. And it's so glad to see that you're actually going okay as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit of touch and go.
Good to see you keeping on.
So, do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you or promote, any of your stuff good coming up?
Oh, for sure. Obviously, Carlos Thiedeke on social media, obviously Facebook and Instagram. I'm on the old Toe Reaper on Instagram because I've taken a couple of fingers and toes in the tournaments for BJJ and grappling, so they started calling me Toe Reaper. So that's what I go on Instagram. So yeah, for sure. Just obviously a huge thank you to yourselves for giving me the opportunity. Huge thank you to my team here. So obviously, yeah, he told me I have to call him handsome. My head coach Julio Dominguez, so the handsome Julio Dominguez, the entire Kraken Army team that I work with here in El Bajío. Obviously Sergio Palacios, Coach Denny Alvarez, Coach Bruno Bastos for all of their support. And yeah, as I said, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and always love having a chat to be able to share experiences, and whether it be about combat sports, about life in general, and comparing Mexico to Australia and all that kind of jazz. Always keen for a chat.
This is great. Yeah, mucho gracias.
De nada, Nico, de nada.
That's it. It was muy bueno. And that's my whole Spanish lexicon.
That's a Spanish lexicon.
God help us.
It was all my years of watching, Mucha Lucha on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. So remember where you can always find us on Instagram and Facebook at Combat Podcast. You'll listen to it in the intro as well. But if you're watching the YouTube version, I'm not going to play that intro for you, but you know where to find us. And like and subscribe to our channel, guys. If you like what we do, share it also. It's always great contact. We always speak to great people as well, like Carlos. So, and if there's anyone else that you want us to speak to or any topics to us, always feel free to slide into our DMs and just let us know what's up. All right, guys. Thanks for that. Time to play the outro. Cheers, Carlos.
See ya.
See you guys.
Us.